Hi, welcome to a podcast series about the movers and shakers behind the scenes in the influencer marketing industry. I'm Bill Hildebolt, your host. I'm one of the co-founders of gen.video, an influencer marketing platform that focuses on specific e-commerce outcomes in our influencer marketing campaigns. And today with me, we have got Michael Kaye, Head of Global Communications at OkCupid. He is an adjunct faculty member in addition and has won numerous industry awards. So I am so excited to have Michael on the show today. Michael, tell us more about yourself and OkCupid.
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be here. And I'm a true Capricorn. So when you ask about myself, I only talk about work. But I've been at OkCupid for almost 4 years at this point. I lead our global communications, but also have absorbed our influencer marketing work as well as our social media content strategy and creation, which has been an absolutely incredible expansion to my role. And to your point, outside, I also teach. I have been a adjunct instructor at colleges for the past about 5 years now, and I'm also on the board of the Human Rights Campaign. So I've been involved with that organization for a little over 5 years now.
Wow, it's amazing. First of all, I don't know how you balance everything that you do at work, let alone the things that you are smashing in outside of work. I do hope you find time for a personal life. We will trust that anybody who works in the dating industry knows how important that is. And so hopefully, we'll get a chance to touch on all of this. And I definitely hope we get a chance to talk on how you're balancing all those different disciplines within communications and public relations. So let's jump into it. First off, a little bit of fun. You work in the industry of love. Have you found it to be more fulfilling than previous categories that you've worked in? Or is it one of those things that it sounds very romantic, pun intended, from the outside, but when you're in it, there are particular challenges that make it as much a job as any other job?
No, absolutely. Especially over the past few years, we've been living through a global pandemic, the biggest civil rights movement, in my generation, a pretty contentious presidential election. And the entire time, I have played a minor role in helping millions of people find companionship and love all around the world. So that's really heartwarming. I've always also been really interested in interpersonal relationships, and it's been such an incredible place to work. My desk is covered with wedding invitations. So it's just so positive so much of the time, which is really nice and very different than some of my past clients. So I worked on the agency side for years on baking soda brands and personal care brands and migraine medication. So it's a very different role here at OkCupid.
Wow, that is incredible. That is so much fun. And that would be great. I can definitely appreciate how, that would be a feel good when you read the news and war and civil strife and partisanship in America, to be able to come in and know you are helping bring the world together. That would be okay. I like that. And so backing up even maybe one more step, what inspired you to be in marketing in the beginning? Like where did that come from?
Yeah, it's funny. In high school, my parents told me I would end up in marketing. So naturally, I tried to pursue every other possible career because I did not want them to be right. So in college, I debated between majoring in English and journalism before landing on business. But unfortunately, the accounting and financial management courses were just way too challenging for me. And I wound up switching to majoring in communications and minoring in sociology, but still taking a bunch of business and marketing courses. And then since then, I've always created really integrated roles for myself, finding ways to incorporate influencer marketing and social media into my day-to-day, both when I was on the agency side and definitely now at OkCupid. And here at OkCupid, I can actually attribute a lot of that to my mentor, who is Melissa Hobley. And she is currently the chief marketing officer at Tinder, but was my manager for almost 3 years and really encouraged me to take on more marketing responsibilities and stepping out of my comfort zone, which was really earned media for so long.
Oh, wow. Now, where did you guys work together? Where did you and Melissa work together?
OkCupid. She
Oh,
shifted
okay.
from OkCupid to Tinder.
All right. And so you guys have managed to maintain that relationship, even though it's technically you are competitors now. Is that fair to
But
say?
technically, we're under the same parent company.
All right. So it's okay. It's
Still in the
okay.
family.
Yeah. All right. That's awesome. I mean, that is a great thing to be able to call out a mentor and, and show that appreciation. That's something we should do more of, is talking about in the podcast series, because that is so meaningful when you have those people that can help guide you, and fulfilling for her, I'm sure, to see all the amazing success you're having. Well, let's dive into, one of those areas a little bit deeper, influencer marketing, near and dear to my heart. It's always interesting when there are, folks where we've reached the point in the, corporate ladder where you've got somebody who's overseeing influencer marketing and other things. And, so helpful for me to understand how managers like yourself, and leaders like yourself manage that balance between influencer marketing and the other disciplines where you have more, in theory, control over the messaging. So tell me about it. How do you partner with influencers at OkCupid, or, in some of your other roles? Where have you found them to be most useful? Any specific challenges in working with influencers that you'd call out for other people? What has that experience been like?
Yeah, I've worked with influencers on different programs for several different clients in my previous life prior to OkCupid, and it's surprisingly not that different. So I've worked with influencers on behalf of consumer packaged good brands, personal care brands, and here we're a dating app, but we're still a product that was created to better people's lives. And when we work with influencers, that's what we want to get across: how we're different from our competitors and how we create a better experience with online dating. So if you break it down that way, I think it's very similar. If we're working with an influencer to promote, let's say, a deodorant, what are we getting across there? We're getting across our product benefits, and we're finding ways to organically and authentically compare them to our competitors in a, probably subtle, discreet way. And that's very similar to what we're doing here. And to your comment about balance, because again, I'm thinking about communications and different press stories and influencer marketing and influencer content and social media and what we're posting on our Instagram and Twitter and or our TikTok. I think the common thread through all the disciplines is that each of them is a storytelling tool. And that's how I sort of think about it. They all complement each other. They all work really well together. I would never launch a huge campaign and rely only on press, just like I would never rely only on influencers or only an Instagram takeover.
That is really interesting. And right. And you probably, when you see them naturally working together, is when you know you're doing it right, would be my guess. And then when you're struggling to have the stories that you're telling across those different channels, when they seem to be falling out of sync, that's maybe when you have to step back and think about, like, okay, why aren't these stories resonating in the same way? Like this, I would assume there's a little bit of that in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And when you're working with influencers, is there any element of finding love is part of the outcome that you're trying to get from them? Or is it really more in the sort of the middle, the experience that they have onboarding, the quality of, I guess, whether it's dates or potential matches that they have? Like, where do you look for them to cross the threshold to, be convinced and be convincing as an influencer representing the brand?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Well, first, in regards to the type of content creators and the type of influencers that we're partnering with, they're typically almost always single, so that's who they are as people. In the content that they create on our behalf, it's really dependent on what comes naturally to them. we never want to force one type of brief on so many different people, but they tend to discuss their dating challenges and their experiences. And in those conversations, they do highlight how OkCupid makes it easier to date online. And we also always find authentic ways to discuss our product differentiators and features. So for us, that's our I'm pro-choice profile badge, or our climate change advocate profile badge, or any ways where we can talk about our in-app matching questions, which we're the only ones that have that. And to no one's surprise, we're in a very crowded market. So every time we can talk about what really makes us different, that's sort of like a win to us.
Yeah, that's great. And there does seem to be something very natural about your focus on letting people be themselves and be proud of, who they are. And that is a pathway to, finding the right match and finding love. That seems like it would be a very easy sell for a lot of influencers out there who probably are pretty comfortable being themselves, but ways that they can further acknowledge that and celebrate that is a really natural fit. So I love that. And speaking of pride, being a part of the LGBT community, how do you ensure that your marketing efforts are inclusive and representative of the diverse experiences within that community?
Yeah, this is a great question. As communicators and marketers, it's really important that we recognize where our true expertise lies. I identify as gay, and I am obviously part of the LGBTQ plus community, but I am not an expert on all queer identity. That's why I partner with the Human Rights Campaign. I work very closely with that organization on both brand campaigns at OkCupid. So they will actually review the campaign creative that we create. So out of home, influencers that we might plan to partner with, slogans and phrases that we're using in any of our campaign materials. I also have worked really closely on product features with that organization. So we are always introducing new product features to make our app even more inclusive for all LGBTQ plus people. And several times the Human Rights Campaign has come in while we're building that new feature and preparing to announce it, and they've weighed in and given their feedback, and that's been really helpful for us. They've been absolutely incredible partners, and that's been happening for the past few years. But OkCupid, before I joined, had a very long-standing relationships with GLAAD as well, and that organization played a very similar role. So I think it's important that anyone is speaking to people from that community that you're targeting, and getting their expertise as well. We don't have to know it all. And I think we get tripped up on that a lot of the times.
You actually anticipated my next question. And I think, no matter what group or groups a person associates with and affiliates with, the danger becomes that you're like, well, okay, well, if you're going to put me in this box and I therefore represent this box, then I can speak for this box. And I think we're learning that's actually quite dangerous in and of itself, right? And so my question is going to be, how do you navigate cultural sensitivity and avoid any stereotypes? I think you've answered that. You've got a broader counsel that you actively go to that that helps give you that broader context, and you don't like lean on your own perceptions or your own experience even. So let me change the question to say, and expand the question to say, do you think that's gotten trickier in just even the last 2 or 3 years, whether for LGBTQ or even generally in society? And again, not to put you on a thing where you have to speak for all mankind, but do you think that's gotten trickier, or do you even think it's getting easier? Which direction is the pendulum swinging at the moment?
I would hope that it's getting easier because people are recognizing all the resources that are available to them. But I also just want to take a moment here to say this is, one of the many reasons why it's so important to have a diverse mix of people in the room at the table. And when you're there and when you're tapping these different resources, don't be afraid to ask questions. I've been with so many people outside the queer community who were just so scared and nervous to ask us authentic questions, and it's okay. The more you know, the more you understand. And I think we're so often to ask for help when in reality, it's probably one of the most genuine things you can do. And then I would also encourage all of us to share stories, listen to or read stories about queer experiences. It's really important for each of us to understand different points of views, because no matter the product or service that you are promoting as a marketer, your target audience is likely a very diverse group of people. So even if you're on a small team of 3 to 5 people, you have to bring in other voices.
Yep. Now that's great. And that's very empowering as a cishet white male. I definitely have that like inner anxiety myself of tripping over these things and tripping in many different directions. And so, what we are afraid of when we have those types of anxieties is we tend to pull into ourselves. And that's obviously the wrong answer. The right answer is to, to lean in, to admit fallibility and try to learn and understand and be willing to, make hopefully the minor mistake here and there. So thank you for sort of that empowering message. How do you now when you're navigating this whole landscape, how do you make sure that that you can appeal to the the unique interests of that LGBTQ community, but also appealing to a wider mainstream audience? Like, and is that continuing to be in conflict, or like, do you feel like those are two different activities, or have we reached the happy place where they're starting to blur in a good sort of way? And, and again, even a heterosexual community can look at some of those, can look at the initiatives you've got for the LGBTQ community and say, hey, this works for me as well. Like this is allowing people to reach their desired match. And that's as relevant for me as it is, for the folks that are being directly targeted here.
Yeah. So this is one of the things that I've loved over the years about working at OkCupid. And the first thing to note, maybe we're in a unique spot, is that a majority of our users really care about the LGBTQ plus community. So it's not just our employees, it's our users as well. And that's really part of why we've always strived to create a very inclusive dating app where every single person feels safe and welcome, regardless of how they identify. We're also very data driven. So we're always listening to how our users are responding to our in-app questions. And our data shows that 74% of our daters advocate for LGBTQ plus rights, and 96% of more than 1.1 million people on our app support things like marriage equality, for example. So we also leverage our core product differentiator and our in-app matching questions to create personalized, tailored experiences for each dater. So we have, what I mean by that is we have localized questions in over 30 countries around the world, since what's top of mind for someone in New York City or San Francisco is probably very different from daters in Berlin or London or Tel Aviv. And similarly, for the queer community, we actually have a whole set of matching questions that were created by and for the LGBTQ plus community, questions about topics that don't really apply or relate to straight daters. And there are even questions that only bisexual people see, and ones that only gay people see. So that's just like one way we are tailoring our product to make sure that everyone feels seen and heard and understood by the dating app that they are using. And we often, when we're thinking about a new product feature, we just think about how meaningful it's going to be for one person. We don't need it to be incredibly meaningful or impactful for 90% of the people on our app. So if it serves a really strong purpose for even a small community and we're able to do it, it's something that we want to do. It's why we've had inclusive features roll out for years. I actually a couple of months ago, I was just wondering, when's the first time we added a question that was specifically for the queer community? Is this something new prior to me joining, but is it something that we did when, this was first trending? And the first question I found that was specifically created for a gay man was in 2004. That's the year we launched. So that's how long we've been adapting our product to queer people, to people of color, whomever the audience is.
That's amazing.
Really nice.
That is really nice. That must have been a heartwarming discovery on your part. I'm going to ask a question purely inspired by what you just said. Does the data ever disagree with where, and again, this I'm going to ask it in a very general way, so hopefully it's not so off the wall it's impossible to answer, but does the data ever disagree with what you believe the company stands for and the direction that you want to go? So is the mission and the data ever in disagreement? Sort of what you're seeing in the data that, in your mind, users are saying one thing, but they're doing another. Do you ever have those conflicts? I assume if you do, you go with your gut versus the data, but I'm just sort of curious because again, like you said, you've got so much data at your fingertips, and I'm just kind of wondering if you ever run across these, or are people actually relatively consistent, in what the data shows and what you believe to be, true to the mission?
I would say there's consistency within certain markets versus how users feel about a certain topic globally. So one thing that we look at in our data, when you answer a question, when we add questions to the app rather, there's two things that we look at after. Obviously, we look at like how many people are responding and what those percentages look like. But the two main things we look at is how important people are ranking this question, because you can actually rank how important a question is to you. We're also looking at skip rates. So we're very political here in the United States. I'm sure that's not shocking anybody who's listening. So we have political matching questions that have been answered like a couple of 100 million times. Like, it's a huge category for us on our app. When we look at how people across different countries are responding to those questions, and we go to Israel, for example, those politically driven questions tend to be skipped at a higher rate than they are by users in the United States. That tells us that while we might want to add new political questions every single month here for our American users, when it comes to our Israeli users, we need to slow that down a bit. This is not resonating with them. So that's sort of where we feel, I would say that's a little bit of a disconnect.
Yeah. That's interesting. You can see people's prioritization. All right, that's awesome. All right, what advice would you give to a company that's just starting out in the marketing to the LGBT community, and how do they ensure their efforts are authentic and well received? And again, I think this is sort of back to my comments about my own, trepidation sometimes. I think any company that is just getting serious about this probably has some pretty serious, oh boy, are we going to mess this up? And should we even start, and so what is that first step that you would suggest to them?
Yeah, before you jump into activism, I like to encourage brands and organizations to focus on education. So reach out to GLAAD, the Human Rights Campaign, the Okra Project, Princess Janae Place, the Trevor Project. There are so many resources out there. There are many transgender, person of color-led grassroots organizations that you can support and would be happy to partner with you. So find an organization that aligns really well with your company's mission and values and create a long-standing partnership. But I always encourage people to take a step back and don't jump right into something. Take a moment, do some behind the scenes work before you become public about your advocacy. People will read right through it.
That is awesome advice. And the reason I know it's awesome advice is because you walk that walk. So you've just connected the beginning to that question, which is great. All right. How do you feel about marketing campaigns run during Pride Month?
We have this question every year. We definitely see rainbow washing during Pride Month. And for anyone who's listening, who doesn't know what that is, it's simply when a company uses rainbow colors in their advertising, branding, or merchandising during June. And do I mind this? No, definitely not. But what I'm less concerned about is your rainbow logos on Instagram or Twitter. And I'm more concerned about if there's LGBTQ plus executives in your C-suite, if there's a pride ERG at your company, or if you donate to LGBTQ plus nonprofits. So I by no means do I mind brand campaigns that target LGBTQ plus people during Pride. I totally get it. It's something we've done at OkCupid as well. However, I think it's important that what you're putting out publicly with any of this content really matches who you are as a company as well.
That's great advice, and great input. Okay. Have you had any influencer campaigns that particularly successfully engaged the LGBTQ community at OkCupid? And can you tell us a little bit about that and what made it successful?
Yeah, I I feel like everyone would give a very similar answer. So I want to actually go beyond the typical metrics. And I would say the most successful campaign has been where we get to fully represent the entire LGBTQ plus community. So often, I think we see white gay men as the face of the queer community.
Mm.
And that's just not representative of our entire rainbow family. OkCupid, we've over the years have worked with Dylan Mulvaney, and she is an incredible transgender rights activist. We've worked with Luke Franchina. We've worked with Jen Winston, who's a bisexual person who uses she, they pronouns. So we really prioritize the diversity within the LGBTQ plus community. And to me, that's a really big win. And that's a successful campaign for us.
That's great. And so is that something you are actively measuring in your influencer market efforts? Are we getting beyond, and what other metrics do you look at? Because it seems like you're very well penetrated within the community and making sure everyone feels comfortable. So what are some of the other metrics you think about in terms of, I don't know, whether it's share or satisfaction, or what are those things you look at in your influencer marketing and other campaigns to show that you're having the impact you want?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at everything probably everyone is. So besides impressions and views, we're looking at overall engagement rate, performance compared to like individual typical sponsored engagement rate. We're watching overall view through rates and seeing if they were ahead of platform benchmarks. And another thing we're looking at, which is probably unique to a dating app, but definitely not unique to mobile apps, is with any marketing that we're putting out there, even press stories, we are always paying attention to downloads that happen during those moments in time. And especially during these Pride campaigns, we're looking at, of these new users who are downloading the app, what percentage of them are LGBTQ plus, and then we're breaking that down even further.
Wow. That is a plethora of different lenses that you can look through. That's
Yeah.
great. All right. Last sort of core question. In your opinion, what's the future of LGBT marketing, and what changes do you see on the horizon? Is there anything you haven't been able to do yet that you're looking forward to, or just natural evolutions that you see and that you're tracking? Where do you think we go from here?
I think, to me, the future of LGBTQ plus marketing is just going to be marketing. I hope our experiences and our stories become more normalized. I want, and something we like loosely touched on just before, I want visibility for every identity within the LGBTQIA plus community, especially when it comes to marketing campaigns. I also want to see brands making an effort to funnel dollars into the LGBTQ plus community, obviously both through nonprofit partnerships, but also looking into hiring LGBTQ plus owned businesses. And even when you can't do that, because I understand, you have certain priorities for a partner, paying closer attention to who's on those account teams as well.
That is phenomenal. Yes, we have several of our clients, are coming to us and talking to us actively about diversity on our staff, diversity in our vendors. And so, we're definitely seeing a real movement, I feel like, across the marketing industry to walk the walk, as opposed to just talk the talk, which is phenomenal to see. Challenging for sure at times, but absolutely the path to success. So that is great. Well, Michael, this has been amazing. We know you've got a very busy schedule, and we definitely appreciate you spending some time with us today. I can't wait for this one to go live. Anything else you'd want to add before we wind it down?
No, I would say I talked a lot about leaning on resources. So for anyone who's listening, if there's any possible way that I can be a resource to you, please feel free to reach out. It's very easy to find me. If you simply look up Michael Kaye, OkCupid, there's only one of me at OkCupid. So I'm happy to chat and be a resource however possible.
That's great. Well, thank you. I mean, clearly you have dedicated a big chunk of your professional career to educating others. And so we appreciate you educating us today. This was amazing. And I likewise look forward to staying in touch with you, and hope all is well going forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you again for having me.
Yeah. And everyone else, thank you for listening. All right. Be well, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. New episodes of Generation Influence drop every Wednesday, so be sure to subscribe to listen on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Next week's guest is Vivek Rastogi from Colgate-Palmolive. You don't want to miss Vivek's inspiring story or miss why he says e-commerce is history. Hope to see you there.